Thank you for joining us again on Family Twist. Our guest this episode is a fellow podcaster, Jeremy Bryant. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, I understand you've got a very interesting family twist, and I only know just a little bit about it, so I'm excited to hear more.
You could say that. You could definitely say that. Uh, it's a elaborate, long story and a lot of changes over the years. I don't know if you want me to jump right into it or not, but
Let's
Sure.
let's go back to the beginning. Yes.
all right. So I grew up your typical white suburban American kid. All the stuff you see in the memes on Facebook is true. That's how it was. But I mean, I always I'm not I won't even say that yet but my parents ended up getting divorced starting when I was in middle school until I was like in high school. So it was a long time coming. But
Hmm.
one of the days my mom just happened to be extra pissed off my father that day. And she just told me, she's like, we're sitting in the living room and she's just like, I got something I want to tell you guys, but I don't know if I should. And I started guessing because, I'm like the wise ass and that's what I do. And I'm like, my brother's not my real brother. I was like kind of hoping on that one, but that wasn't true. I forget what the next like one or two were, but eventually I said, "Dad's not a real dad, is he?" And she was just like, the look she gave me was like, and she just said, like straight out said, like, "How do you know that?" And I'm like, "We look nothing alike." I towered over him since I was in middle school. Like, what do you mean? How do I know that? but
Right.
But yeah, it ended up being that my father had cancer when he was in college, and the radiation killed his soldiers. So,
Mm.
they had to use a
Mhm.
donor. They went through all the right methods and everything like everybody did back then that wanted to do it. Which
Sure.
apparently, where I lived, you went to Albany for that, and there was a lot of different Albany, New York for that, and there was a lot of different people I now know of that had their parents do that to make them. But
Hmm.
so basically, we found out the truth then. Apparently, the whole family knew except for us, basically. But
Okay.
they
How many siblings do you have?
just me and my brother. But
Okay.
it's expensive, man. They couldn't do it more than twice.
Mhm.
Did they use the same donor?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that eventually. But yeah, yeah, they did.
All right.
But yeah. So I mean, it's expensive. And they only did it twice, and then that was enough. They didn't want any more kids than that. But so yeah. So found out that day. My dad's not my real dad. My dad, of course, was at work, and as soon as my mom told him and said, "Hey, they know," he came out to the house and like was just like hugging, crying, like hugging while crying, and
Yeah.
like apologizing, saying he didn't want us to find out that way. And we're just like, it's not that big a deal. It doesn't change anything. You've always been our dad. It's not like
Right.
that's not gonna make you dad anymore. Like you've
Right.
always been the dad, whether you're genetically or not. Who cares? You're still dad. But so
Hmm.
moving forward from that, I mean, after that, just kind of like we knew it, but it didn't change anything. It didn't matter. So we didn't really talk about it for a good. I mean, unless I'm explaining to like one of my girlfriends throughout the years, like why I don't look like my dad. But other than that, like it just kind of dropped until, well, the two really aren't related. But my dad passed in 2017 from a heart surgery he couldn't come back from. But
Mm.
Mm.
cancer too, because the radiation destroyed the sac around his heart. So because
Oh.
late 70s radiation was not anywhere near as good as today's. But
Sure.
Mhm.
Right.
Caustic. Yeah.
but he passed away in October of 2017, and that Christmas I bought ancestry tests for myself and my mother just for shits and giggles, and because we always argue over what we have besides Italian. But
Right.
so we got him back, and I was like, all right, I'm like, I'm European Jewish. I don't know what that means, but I guess I looked into it, and I guess it has nothing to do with the actual religion. It's just the group of people that lived in Europe at certain times, like from like 10 to 1200. But
Right.
so I mean, that's majority of who I am, and I'm like, that's not really what I want to hear. Like, I mean, nothing against that, but it just I kind of want to hear like I'm Italian, I'm German, like not
Right.
not you're a clusterfuck of all these things put together, but I mean it's whatever. So a couple months pass, and it like eventually I get a message. I think it was like in February or March after that Christmas, and it's from this girl, and she straight up says like, I think you may be my half brother. I think, did you have a donor as a father? Did your parents use a sperm donor? And right away, I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, they did. I know they did. And she's like, I think we're from the same donor.
Wow.
And it basically has turned into this one. She already knew about two other half sisters before she found me, my brother. And since then, we found two more half brothers. Well, actually, three more half brothers, and maybe a half sister or more too. We've had overall, there's about 8 or 9 of us in a group chat right now that we talk to each other through all the time. We call
Wow.
it DC family, Donor C family, but I mean, it basically has turned into this amazing like thing where I mean, I haven't yet to meet any of them. My brother has met most of them. My full brother has met most of them, but I don't travel as much as he does, so I really don't get a chance to go see people.
Mm-hmm.
Might be seeing one end of this month, maybe. I don't know. He said he
Oh.
was going to go on a trip around to, but I don't know if he was just drinking that night or something. But, but I mean, it's just, I mean, some of them want nothing to do with us. Like we've met a couple, and like my one half sister even has like basically a PDF packet she sends out with like all the information about our donor Kirk, who I email back and forth with for like one message, and then just because I got nothing I need to get from him. Like, yeah, I mean, if I need to find some medical history someday, at least I can contact him. But I don't need to go to him and do anything. Like, it's just like I'm not looking for someone to replace my father. And
Right.
I mean, I would love to meet the man. Don't get me wrong. I've been told by my half sisters that I sound just like him. So I would love to meet the man just to compare things. But and I mean, he was actually he was a doctor. He was going to college to be a doctor at that time, and that was how he made money on the side, was donating sperm.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, medical school is very expensive, and sounds like he was pretty. He was at the clinic very frequently.
Yeah, that's yeah. They're actually my one half sister and her friend did a podcast about it called Biohacked, where my half sister was on the first 3 episodes talking about like her situation, and it was actually her and her recordings of her and Kirk meeting for like the first time, and like they're like interviews that with like afterwards, like how they felt about it and everything. It's interesting. They moved away from that topic towards the second season, so I haven't listened to the show since. But I mean, but it's just, I mean, I got a shout out in the course, so like because all the half bros and half sisters did, but it's just it's interesting. Like you never would imagine you have all these people who are half family to you, and that you never knew they existed. And that apparently we all lived within 100, 200-mile radius of each other growing up because our parents all went to Albany to get sperm from that sperm bank. So
right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Now, are they? Because you're in Massachusetts,
I'm
right?
in Massachusetts now, but I grew up in New York. So
Okay. So are they kind of all scattered around the New York area? Or?
my full brother, along with I believe one of the half sisters, lives in Florida. A couple live around New York. They moved upstate when COVID happened, but they still live in New York. And then the other ones, I am honestly not too sure where they live. I think it's more they're out Midwest somewhere now, but I'm not 100% sure. It's just we stay in touch, but we're not talking to each other like on like a daily or weekly basis or anything. It's just like we all have our own lives, our own kid. Most of us have our own kids and our own significant others to deal with. So, I mean, it's hard enough as it is in this life.
What's the age range of your siblings?
Well, I'm turning 35 this Friday, actually, but I would say, I mean, my full brother is almost 2 years younger than me. So they're all in their early 30s to maybe late 30s. I think I'm not the oldest, I don't think, but I'm close to the oldest. So,
Gotcha.
Really cool.
And what does your mom think of the finding these half siblings?
She thought it was cool. I mean, she didn't. She was more amazed that she finally got to see a picture of the donor.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Because like you could see, because we always wondered where we got our noses from. Because like we always thought there was big Italian noses because that's what we were told. But because my mom's side of the family is Italian fully, well for the most part fully. But so it turns out that it comes from Kirk because he has the same exact nose I do, and he's the same exact eye shape my brother does. It's just like you look at the picture, you could look at either picture of either of us, and you're just like, wow, the similarities are striking. So I mean, that's what amazed her the most. I mean, she thinks it's cool, but I mean, she doesn't. She made a joke at one point like, what about all the moms? We should have a support group that for all this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Right.
I'm like, why? I'm like, ours is like the least tragic story of any of my half siblings. Like, it's just because
Oh,
we it wasn't like a like I'm pretty sure one of them like even like their parents hid it from them until they found out through an ancestry test.
wow.
And like you can't do that. Like those are the stories you hear about where it's just like, oof, like on the podcast they did biohack, like a lot of people tell their stories like that where like it causes so much turmoil and trauma in the family. And with us, it was something that
Mhm.
happened that was over in like a day when they told us. Like it wasn't a big deal. It didn't
Yep.
change a thing. It didn't change a freaking thing in the world except we knew what we always suspected anyway. And it's better than hearing, "Oh, I cheated on your father with the mailman." So
Right. Of
Right.
course. I mean, it is surprising how many people find out that way, though. I mean, we've had several people on the show who have talked about how they found out was after their parents have died. They're going through like their papers and stuff, and then they find they find something that way. So it's
Yeah.
like not only did they not find out, their parents never tell them, but they can't ask them about it either because they're dead.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just I don't get why. I mean, I get why they do it because we know when all this was first happened, when they were using sperm donors back in the late '80s, early '80s, whatever it was, for all this, they didn't never suspected there'd be a day where you can send your spit in and get DNA back from it. Like, who saw that coming unless you end up being like a murder victim? But
True.
so it's just,
True.
it's just, I mean, I could see that they thought this day would never come, but really, once your kids are mature enough to handle the truth, you should just tell them the truth. Like,
Sure.
if you're really the parent your whole life anyway, and you're there regardless, they're not gonna think anything different of you. If you're a shitty father, then you got other issues anyway. So woohoo, like that's on you.
Right.
But I mean,
Right.
they're gonna find out eventually.
Yeah, I always joke about my situation because I always knew I was adopted, and my joke about my hometown is that the town was so small. If my parents tried to hide it, there'd be no way. Everybody knew. It's like because they had lived there before I was born and after, and so there was no hiding that.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it just. I mean, we grew up in a small town too, but I don't think our town knew about this like fact. Like it was just
Right.
some of them might have because they were friends of my parents and whatnot, but just was never like a big thing that everybody knew about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did your sister find out who the donor was? Was that public information available, or?
See, this is a part. I always forget how she. I think. Oh yeah, that's how she on her ancestry tree. There was somebody on there who he ended up being the nephew of our donor, and like
Mm.
she said like how we related, and he's like, and like they kept coming up with blanks for how they were related. So at that point, it was just like and she said like she's like I think I'm gonna be related to your. She asked like, "When your family ever donate sperm?" And like or were they around the Albany area? I guess she might have phrased it that way first, but basically that's how she found out. She found out through a relative that was on the family tree with her,
Wow.
and like it took him a while to like. At first, like his family didn't want him like talking to her at all or like saying anything, and then eventually Kurt just decided, like, why do I care? Like they're not going to come to me for money. If they do, I just turn them away. Like it's not
Right.
like it's not a big deal. Like so, it took him a little while to open to it too.
How many of your half siblings kind of have a relationship with him now?
One or two. I mean, all the three half sisters that started have all met him together, and they had like a little weekend out of it or something. But as far as I know, none of us half brothers have met him yet.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, I'm not sure. Other than that, like I'd love to meet him someday, but he's also on the other side of the country, so it's not as easy.
Right.
Not convenient. Yeah.
Has there been talk with your siblings about having like a full-on reunion with all of you?
We've talked about it plenty, but just a lot of us have small children at this point, and it's just not feasible.
Right.
I mean,
That makes
we're mostly
sense.
on the East Coast, so it wouldn't be that hard, but still, it just, I don't know. We haven't really put it into motion yet. And I mean, we all have our own lives. We're all busy doing our own thing. So,
Sure.
So I'm guessing your brother has been sort of on board with this if he's met, most of your half siblings. What's his take on this whole experience?
my brother doesn't like to talk emotions a lot. So, I mean, we never really even talked about like it didn't mean anything to us that he wasn't our father. It's just what it was. So
Yeah.
we neither of us had any ill feelings towards anything to do with it since it started. I mean, he did a 23andMe DNA test before I did even, but they were on Ancestry and they contacted me first. That's just the way it went. And then I tied him into it, and that's just the way it went. Like I tied him into it, and then we ended up meeting some of them because he was in New York City and he met the couple that live in New York City, and then he met the one that lived in Florida when he moved to Florida. So
Right.
it just worked out. I mean, in his travels, he met one of the half brothers too, just because they happened to meet up. So, I mean, my brother travels a lot though, so I mean, it was always easy for him to do that type of stuff.
Right. So I've been listening to your podcast, Paranormal: The New Normal. How did you get into that subject matter?
Since I was a kid, I used to take the one book out in elementary school that had Bigfoot and Loch Ness and all those well-known creatures in it, and I used to read it over and over again. And from there, it just kind of went away as I got older because, girls aren't into Bigfoot. So I had to kind of leave it behind for a while. But then when I started listening to podcasts, I just got into Bigfoot again more and more, and I got another paranormal stuff. And when I started podcasting on another podcast before that, they said you need to start your own show with something you love. And I was like, all right, well, what do I love? I'm like, paranormal.
Yeah.
So let's do a paranormal podcast.
Cool.
Have you had any supernatural experiences?
Oh, I live in a haunted house, so yeah, kind of.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
On purpose or
No, not on purpose. Just kind of the way it goes sometimes. But it's Massachusetts.
Can I have one of these?
Yeah. It wasn't marketed that way, is what you're saying.
I don't think anybody would market that way.
Yeah.
Come and live with us.
Oh, I'm sure there's some people that would love to live in a haunted house.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Paranormal is just something I like to think about things that could be true, but might not be true, and try to connect the dots. Like that's the fun of it.
Right.
I flipped it over.
What kind of spirit is in the house, in your house now?
We believe it's just the gentleman who lived here before us, but we don't know for sure. And at this point, we just kind of want to get rid of it. But I'm talking.
Did he die in the house?
No. But that's
that's
TV lore that they have to haunt where they die.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So he's just coming back because this is the place he knows.
Spirits can get attached to property just as easily as they can to an object or to where they die. I mean, just the ones that get stuck where they die, it's usually just a confusion of like after death. Like it's usually like a sudden thing where they don't know where they are.
Gotcha. What's one of the weirder things that you've encountered since you've been doing this?
Honestly, I'm not like an experiencer like to that degree. Like I mean, just knowing there's something around you and like you could feel it. Like I never seen it, but you can feel it. And like we've had chickens die from it. We've had our dogs screaming like they're being murdered, but they're perfectly fine. Just so I mean, it's just weird things happen, and you can't do anything about it. But it's just weird things happen.
Right. Wow, that's wild. What do your siblings think of the podcast?
They have actually never talked to me about it. I mean, my brother just says like, do what you want to do, what makes you happy. But the rest of my half siblings I haven't really talked to about it that much. I mean, they know I do it, but they just, I mean, I assume they do because I assume they do because I posted enough on Facebook they have to see it. So, but I mean, I assume they know. It's just we never really talked about it.
So they haven't been on as guests or anything.
No, I mean, honestly, I never even thought to ask them that. It's just I never lack for guests because there's so many paranormal people who have had experiences out there. There's so many people studying the paranormal field nowadays that it's never ending the amount of guests you can get.
Right. Yeah, I can only imagine. Ours is a little bit more, tighter as far as like the type of people that would be good guests for here, for sure.
Of course, I mean, well, paranormal is the number one podcast type out there right now, pretty much, besides true crime. So,
right, yeah.
I mean,
people are fascinated by it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a spiritual awakening that's been going on since either 2012 or 2015. people's beliefs and when it started to change. But it's
Mhm.
just people are slowly realizing there's more to this world than we previously thought with our go to church every Sunday lives we lived, where we didn't think outside the box.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
So
Hmm. So, do you have any aspirations for like what your relationships will be like in the future with your siblings?
I'd like to get to meet them and maybe get to know them a little bit. But I mean,
Yeah.
I also went 20 something, 28, 27 years of my life without knowing who they are, or
Right.
actually
Mhm.
30 years basically. So, I mean, it's also like, it's not going to change my life completely that they're there. I mean, yeah, they
Yeah.
may look a little bit like me, or some of them look like a little bit more like my brother, but I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, they're there. I'd love to meet them. I'd love to spend time with them, but I don't get time to do much of anything between podcasting and real life. So,
Right.
it's
Gotcha.
just, if I want to lose, I don't know. Maybe someday. That's all I keep saying.
Has anyone said, does the donor know like how many successful pregnancies
Mm.
there were?
No, you don't get. They don't hear once they donate. They don't get information back about it at all because that's how the way it was
Mm,
supposed to be.
gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because we interviewed someone a few weeks ago who I think he's up to like 75 siblings.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we hypothesized there could be 100 out there easily, but and he
Wow.
Yeah.
he hypothesized. He actually has a hypothesized when he was on the other podcast. He said that there could have been anywhere from 100 to 200 like successful at least because he donated a lot over the years to pay for medical school. So
Right.
Wow.
Right. Mm,
Wow.
good for him.
apparently a lot of the
I mean, it is.
apparently a lot of they advertised that to college. So a lot of the doctors he was going to college with
Mhm.
they wanted intelligent young men who had good health to do it. So
Mhm.
Sure. No, makes total sense. Absolutely.